Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 79, and hopefully not too long, because after this, I gotta get ready to stream reacting to Monchan World Finals 22 qualifying. So, what are today's topics?
Wagner invaded Russia, Titan disaster, Humanist reports stupid Orca video, new US-Iran nuclear agreement, Michael Knowles says trans don't have rights, RFK Jr. is a joke and a quack, and Kirsten Cinema wants to deregulate airline training because she wants to deregulate everything because she's a Republican and loves it when people die.
Ooh, Bosch would be triggered by that one.
Well, that's because Porsche's part of the CIA, so of course he would be.
Alright, so what do you want to talk about first?
Oh, we can start with Wagner invading Russia, because this was a hell of a thing that happened.
Yep, literally happened last week. So, for all of you who don't know, Wagner is a mercenary group that's hired by Russia to fight in the Russo-Ukraine war and all that stuff. Now, the last few months, they've mostly been doing all the fight in Bakhmut, which that's been like the talk about the last several months about the battle in Bakhmut and all that, which Russia eventually won, but very little territorial gain for nothing valuable. And likewise, the Ukrainian counteroffensive just happened recently, and for the last month, there hasn't been really any change whatsoever either, so it's still largely a stalemate, unfortunately. But of course, Wagner, Prigozhin, who's the founder of Wagner, he believes that Russia's military defense shit have been screwing over Wagner to not make him win too bigly, if you get what I'm saying. Weaken them, win, but not win in a blowout to embarrass Russia's military, basically. And he feels like they're doing it on purpose, and he's been ripping them a new asshole the last few months. I think we even covered it, I think it was back in April or May or whatever. He said that once we take over Bakhmut, we're just leaving it right there, completely withdrawn before Russian troops go there and stuff like that. It was just crazy. So of course, just recently, as you see on this map, Wagner actually straight up invaded Russia itself earlier this month, and they made.
Yep, I remember that.
And when I first saw it, it showed on the map that they made halfway to Moscow, because that was the whole point of it, and they got very far very quickly. They've largely didn't face much resistance whatsoever, and according to this map, it looks like they almost made all the way to the blockades towards Moscow, but all the maps I saw didn't really get up there. So of course,
no, I don't think they got quite that far, but the city
halfway.
I know they got Voronezh.
Yeah, that was the halfway mark. That was where I saw them get to. But yeah, they got pretty far in, and that was just a day or so too. They got that far in, and guys, that's a huge amount of territory. For all of you don't know, Ukraine's the size of Texas, and that looks very, very halfway there between Ukraine from one side to the other. So just think about how far they made in just a day. That's huge. So, of course, we were probably wondering, what were they going to do? Was this a coup attempt and all that? Prigozhin was no, it wasn't going to be an overthrow of Putin. It was more to state a message or a fuck you to their military and all that, because he has major problems with them. And they made far, and then all of a sudden, he withdrew. That quick. Was what's going on here? Well, it turns out, apparently, they made some sort of deal where, since there's not much details about it, so there's so much confliction about it, he's fled, pretty much Wagner's fled to Belarus. And now Ukraine's afraid they might try and do some attack up there. How are they going to do it? That's even weaker than the Russian military, so that would not really work out.
And we're pretty sure that, that if he did, the Ukraine turn around and then march on him.
And
march on Lukashenko.
And there wouldn't be any charges filed, because Putin was acting like this is treason, we're going to kill the treasonous terrorists and all that, so that didn't happen. And there was another thing. Oh, possibly, because I've seen some things about this, that maybe there might be some sort of purges going on right now in the Russian military.
Yes, I heard about that.
Shoigu and all them. But I've heard things that people have been arrested, and I hear, oh, they're not, so I have literally no idea what's going on there. It's really weird. So, yeah, all that, and a lot of Wagner is actually very unhappy that Prigozhin did this. We were this close to Moscow, let's go all the way there and, I guess, do whatever. But that didn't happen. Now, of course, even though nothing seems to have really happened, this is still embarrassing for Russia if you think about it. A private military in one day made it halfway to Moscow with, like, no resistance, and the resistance they did get, they shot down, like, a lot of Russian planes and helicopters that harassed them and all that. Like, this is embarrassing. Not only did you lose, like air power, but the fact that a private military with not really any sort of force invaded that deep into you, that's pretty bad. And maybe it would help Ukraine too, which would be nice, so that there's less troops to deal with and all that. But, of course, still nothing's changed at the moment, so what do you have to say about this?
Honestly, I feel like, well, I've heard that the Wagner group, at least part of them is going to be actually integrated into the main military.
Oh, yeah, that too, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah, that also reminds me, supposedly Prigozhin might try and get, like, better, like, paying roles, like, doing private military stuff, like, in Africa and all that, and Syria. That was another thing he got, supposedly. So, yeah. Anything else you got to say about this, like, how far they got into it, and how embarrassing this is for Russia?
I've heard rumors that, this indicates that Russia's got, like, almost their entire military in Ukraine.
Like, I think we even covered, too, a long time ago, supposedly 97% of Russia's offensive military is in Ukraine. Which, that's probably a big chunk of their military. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if it was at least 90%.
Yeah.
I wonder how the Ukraine Nazi terrorist state, American Diabolists are coping about it.
Oh, they were coping hard. Like Hinkle Boy, he was mauled in.
Oh, goody.
He blamed NATO for this in America.
Of course. He blames literally everything on America because he's an American Diabolist. And he also thinks that the CIA is involved in literally everything ever. He woke up on the wrong side of the bed. The CIA put him on the wrong side of the bed.
Danny hype on too. Yeah, they've been seeming so hard. It's so funny. So yeah, doesn't seem to be anything's happened though, other than this just looks embarrassing. But of course, there hasn't been really anything that's changed in the Russo-Ukraine war like the last year or so. That's why we haven't been really talking about much. But of course, if anything major happens, we'll be talking about it as soon as we can. All right, so I think we're now on to the next topic.
That will be the Titan disaster.
Okay, this just happened recently too. So for all of you who don't know, of course, this was about the submersible that imploded while trying to explore the Titanic. Now, of course, in the 40 years since Titanic was discovered, there have been submersibles going down there to explore it. And mostly it was just like somewhat like military exploration and, of course, in case some regards, filming, like the Titanic movie, because that was a big part of the movie was that exploration part. But now, of course, since I was afraid it's going to happen, especially when it comes to space travel very soon, now private companies are starting to go down there and do tours and all that. Yep. And I bet they're trying to get that market done as fast as possible since Titanic is supposed to be disappearing probably in the next 10 years, remember?
Yep, I remember that.
Since it's falling apart from the ocean and all that.
Yep.
So, of course, this supposedly was this is a Father's Day trip to see a Titanic and all that. Now, for all of you who don't know, the Titanic is 2.5 miles deep into the ocean floor. Now, for all of you who don't know, when you get down there, you have to deal with not just like air from being underwater, but atmospheric pressure. Basically crushes your body, or at least the gases in your body, because I saw a video recently about atmospheric pressures on your body. So, I think it was like every 100 feet you go underwater, the atmospheric pressure increases by like 4 to 40 pounds or something like that. It becomes very heavy to the point where if you get deep enough, you'll be crushed. So, yeah. You can't go down there safely unless you're in some sort of submersible that can handle that pressure. Oh, I think I saw the video I saw. I think it described it basically. If you're down at the Titanic's seafloor 2.5 miles down, the pressure you'd face would be equivalent of a soda can being run over by a train.
Oh.
Or something like that. Like, it's instant death pretty much. And that's what happened. Instantly imploded. They spent like a week finding it, and now I just saw while I was getting this picture for the video, of course, it was the New York Post, so of course take it with a grain of salt, but supposedly they managed to retrieve the remnants of the submersible and all that. Now, of course, as bad as it sounds that 5 people died, what we found out afterwards is how they died is because, of course, of corporate greed and incompetence. As it turns out, one of the CEOs that runs OceanGate, which is the group that did this submersible, did massive cost cutting. They made it like so cheap that it was unsafe. Like everyone, their mother was telling them it's not safe. James Cameron, of course, the Titanic director, who I found out also is heavily involved in submersible industry.
Yep.
From all that, he said it was like unsafe and all that. Like everyone that was involved in the industry said it was as safe. And apparently, we found out one of the owners that died too. Funny enough, in this, he was saying that we can't really worry about safety because safety and regulation will stifle innovation. Sometimes you just gotta take a risk and all that for innovation and all that. Yeah, how's that feel now that you're, dead? Fucking idiot. And this is why, of course, as we've been saying for years now, you need to have strong government regulations that regulates this stuff. Because you can't just rely on the industry or individuals to regulate themselves. Because in the end, all corporations and people care about is that one extra penny. They're like Mr. Krabs. If they can save one extra penny by cheaping out, they're going to do it. Now, if they're regulated and forced to by severe penalties to not do that, then they'll have to just do it. But they can't. They're not going to do it on their own, and that's why strong government regulations is required, especially for something like this where you're going to die underwater that deep if something goes bad. There's a reason why this is not. This is, I think, the first submersible that's ever imploded in going down to see a Titanic in the almost 40 years. Why? Because all the previous things before were military or government-related stuff. So they had to make sure everything was done correctly so no one dies. Jesus Christ and all that. Exactly. So yeah, what do you guys see about this?
Kind of deserve it. But man,
you're doing the dirtbag leftist take on Twitter, I see.
I said kinda deserve. Okay. So the ones who were advocating for the deregulation, they kind of
are clowns.
All through to their labour of their advocacy. Otherwise, and not so much. I'm kind of at this point. I'm kind of in the middle between. So I find myself a fair bit on.
Yep, this is the comeuppance you get for not advocating for strong government regulations and all that. And of course, we're going to probably get into this a little bit too coming up. But oh my God, have you seen on Twitter and YouTube the amount of people on the left that outright say that these people there are evil and they deserve everything that happened to them? Have you seen that?
Yes, I've seen that a lot.
Which is absolutely ridiculous. These were mostly passengers, for crying out loud. Why do they deserve to die from this? And also, how are they evil because they went to see the Titanic? How is that evil?
Okay, if I'm going to be fair, I think a lot of them are saying that a lot of them are the ones who were advocating the deregulation of that industry, which would lead to the unsafe conditions.
Because it was only one person that was involved in the industry, and that was one of the CEOs of OceanGate. The rest were just passengers. What do the passengers have to do with this?
So that one, you can kind of say, yeah, this one is like he's kind of getting the fruit of his labor. But the rest, not so much. I mean, okay, four of the 5 were super rich, and so it could be like, cool, rich people, cool, another, cool, less rich people in the world, but that'll be about it.
And of course, and I love it is really just like we're gonna get to Mike with like his anti-cop bigotry. A lot of this is just straight up just bigotry against the rich. Rich people died, therefore they're evil and they deserve it. Which, sorry, you're just wrong. No one should die because they went to explore the Titanic, and the business they went to for their submersible was so greedy and incompetent that they made something that was unsafe. No one should have to die for that. And the left needs to learn to stop being like this bigoted against like rich people. To the point that basically it came off to me like if you're rich, you're automatically evil in a lot of these people's eyes. When I saw like their tweets and comments and all that, and it was just BS. I mean, is Bernie evil in that regard because he's rich? No.
No, but I think that some of them would actually say that, but then others are like, well, Bernie is kind of an exception because he's not actually that rich. We're talking like billionaires and all that.
Always the gymnastics. Just cool out with the rhetoric. Like, no one deserves to die for this. Just because you're rich doesn't mean you're evil and all that. And just stop. Just an unfortunate tragedy. Hopefully Ocean Gate suffers severe economic consequence that'll cause them to go bankrupt and all that. And hopefully, same goes with space travel. Because, that's right too. Since the last few years, private corporations and all of them have been doing like space travel, like testing private rockets and all that. And have you seen how many times where they crash as soon as they take off? I've seen so many times in the last year or so. Yeah, this is why you also need regulation for them too. I've seen them crash way more frequently than I, of course, ever would probably see with like military and stuff like that because they're required to get right at all costs. Whereas corporations are going to cut any cost possible. Because this is going to happen. Unless you do this with the private industry for space travel, guess what? You're going to see a lot of people dying in space because of something stupid that could have easily been avoided if they were regulated. So stop advocating for like less government regulation and advocate for more. And that's the freaking end of it. Alright, so anything left to say about this?
Not really.
Alright then. So now, on to the next subject.
And that will be... speaking of Humanist Report's stupid Orca video, saying that thing you said, I'm actually genuinely wondering, like, if we have another black nationalist terror attack, I wonder if Mike would actually engage in black nationalist apologetics. I could genuinely, if cops died in that attack, I could genuinely see him doing that.
Yeah, I could, and I'd be very, very, very cringe if he did. Ugh, just cringe just thinking about it. So anyways, this is the first time we're straight gonna have to go after Mike on this one, as we seen a lot of his videos over the years. He's awesome, but this one is a pretty bad L. So recently, apparently, I think it was in the Mediterranean, there has been a lot of cases where orcas, which are killer whales, have been destroying yachts and causing people to be stuck out in the middle of the ocean, only to be saved by coast guards and all that. And of course, since of course they're rich people that this happens to, Mike actually jokingly, like, basically supports it, basically. And it's very cringe and wrong. So, let's watch this bullshit.
Just last month, killer whales surrounding a boat sailing through the Strait of Gibraltar were met with loud noises, an attempt by the crew to scare them off. The pod rammed the boat continuously for over an hour, managing to remove the rudder. With seawater gushing into the boat, the experienced crew of 4 issued a mayday call and were eventually towed to shore unharmed.
Like a bit stupid.
In another recent instance off the coast of Spain, 3 orcas repeatedly struck a yacht, causing it to sink entirely after Spanish Coast Guards rescued the crew on board.
Well, comrades, I'm happy to report some very good news. It seems as if the socialist revolution has finally arrived, but the proletariat isn't rising up and eating the rich. Based orcas, however, are. And you just love to see it. Now, this graph, courtesy of PBS News, includes data from a local network of sailors that reported 7 sightings and 9 attacks in the month of June alone, just in the Strait of Gibraltar.
So, on this one, it's like, you don't celebrate the deaths, but...
Well, I don't think any of them have died, but getting your boat sunk by orcas and left stranded in the middle of the ocean, that's not good.
No. It's stupid of the rich people to be using the loud things when you're kind of just inviting trouble, but it kind of is a fuck around and find out, but still, like, celebrating the destruction is not cool.
And here's the thing, too. It's not just that they sunk ships. Guys, orcas can kill people. They've killed people. Like at SeaWorld. They've killed people. They can kill people. They're one of the few animals they are one of the few animals in the world that will and can kill people without much reason to. Like, this is a very dangerous situation to be stuck out in the middle of the water when you're surrounded by orcas that can kill you. And the fact that Mike supports this too is disgusting.
But this isn't a new phenomenon because, as Gizmodo explains, in early May, 3 orcas took down the Alboran Champagne, a Swiss yacht sailing through the Strait of Gibraltar. All 4 people who had been aboard the ship were rescued, but the ship wasn't. It was the 3rd boat that orcas had sunk off the Iberian Peninsula in recent years. Just a few weeks later, the whale struck again, this time targeting another yacht, a 66-foot-long British vessel called the Beauty of Clyde. This boat didn't sink, but was severely damaged, according to The Independent. Both incidents come as part of a string of more than 250 run-ins in which orcas have appeared to willfully attempt to...
He literally did the deal with its sunglasses on the orca in the video.
...wreck boats in the region dating back to 2020. I'm sorry, but can we just pause for a moment? Orcas are targeting gigantic yachts. They are sinking Swiss yachts named Alboran Champagne. It doesn't get any more pretentious than that. And with these details in mind, how could you not root for them?
Because their damaging property can kill people, Mike. Like, that should be a pretty obvious no. And also, Mike, you should know that them doing this is very likely to possibly get, like, the Coast Guard to go out and hunt them down and kill them. Like, come on. Like, you really think the Coast Guard is going to just let orcas tear down boats and possibly kill people without some sort of response? Like, come on, Mike. Stop being stupid. And isn't orcas, like endangered or, like, near threatened?
Let me look this up.
Could have sworn they're not in a good shape species-wise, and we don't need their population to go down other...
Yep, they're endangered.
Yeah,
the orca is listed as endangered.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of it's also due to climate change, but we don't need them to go around possibly killing orcas because they're attacking people's boats. Like, Mike, you gotta think about this for just a little bit. Imagine if you were out in the boat in the Mediterranean, all of a sudden orca destroyed your boat, left you out in the ocean to possibly get killed by them. I don't think you would like it then, would you? But of course...
Yeah, because remember,
orcas...
the killer whale, the orca... is one of the few species that consistently has human on the menu.
Yeah, they actively will hunt people down if that's an option. Whereas most animals won't, but they're one of the few that will. So those people could be killed by it.
Give me an example. I think for creatures like the saltwater croc, for example, take the great white. Mistaken identity when they attack.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a common misconception with sharks. They don't actively go after people. Usually they're confused.
Yeah, they mistake us for a seal
turtle.
or a turtle.
Yeah.
With even saltwater crocs, like they'll only go after humans if they're desperate, and even then, it's not very often.
And it probably provoke too.
Yeah, usually again, attacks are like they're kind of desperate for food, or
fucked with.
Again, might even partly be a mistaken identity thing as well. And even like bears again. But yeah, orcas are like,
they will go after you.
See humans, yeah, they'll be like, oh, tasty. Oh, humans are actually kind of tasty.
Yeah. You don't mess with orcas, Mike. These will kill you. And they've killed people too. And the fact that you're so casually like supportive of this, and of course, we know the real reason, Mike. You, just like you've said before, you don't like trust cops. You just have a deep-seated hatred for rich people. That's what it boils down to.
I, for one, welcome our new orca overlords, and apparently others do too. Jay Bowie on Twitter tweeted out, "Solidarity with my orca comrades." Now, additionally, Blame Tag writes, "Have you guys seen J.K. Rowling's $19.2 million yacht?"
Oh!
And by you guys...
advocating violence against J.K. Rowling, I see. I don't even remember seeing that when I covered this video before. Guys, we know... J.K. Rowling sucks and she's a turd, but that doesn't mean she deserves to die or have violence done to her. Come on.
I mean, orcas. Yeah. And people are so stoked about the orca.
Seriously, like, okay. Remember the
sucks.
whole thing where people were being like, here's the thing. Part of why J.K. Rowling got to where she is is partly because of the threats and that she legitimately got.
Yep.
Granted, that didn't stop her pulling an Anita Sarkeesian and declaring that all criticism was violence, and then going into her, and then completely bubbling herself. But even so, it's like, yeah, that doesn't mean she's like. You gotta understand in regards to JK why.
And you gotta also realize you look insane to most people too.
Yeah.
And if you want to get in power, you have to appeal to normies. And guess what? Normies don't like celebrating people getting possibly killed and destroyed by orcas.
A revolution that they even made a song about the orcas.
I don't even know if I want to watch this.
And their song about them is a little bit overboard. Terrible.
Like, you're not
It's
funny
terrible.
right now.
But in all seriousness, they're not done harassing rich people, and they're now seemingly targeting American oligarchs because, as Gizmodo continues,
And Mike, who says they're gonna only bug rich people? They could attack any boat. Not every rich person has a boat, and not everyone who owns a boat is rich. We had a boat before. Like, come on.
on Sunday, a group of researchers surveying the seas from a plane spotted 4 whales just south of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard in an area where orca sightings are exceedingly rare, according to it.
I'm sure climate change is probably pushing them up north.
Climate change. Yep,
New York
that's
Times
just climate
report.
change.
Elsewhere in New England, a fishing crew noted another orca in Cape Cod Bay near Provincetown, Massachusetts on the same day. But it gets even better because 20 killer whales were spotted off the coast of San Francisco, and I'm going to just assume that they showed up to do reconnaissance against the elites in Silicon Valley. It's the only logical explanation.
Mike.
So it's
God, Mike, just shut
Stop
the
it, Mike.
fuck up.
Seriously.
It's most likely because of climate change. They're probably coming down here.
Yeah.
Oh my fucking god.
not just that the orcas have already sunk the yachts for rich people. They are now showing up to locations where we usually don't see them, and I think they're sending a message to these elites elsewhere throughout the world.
Mike,
No,
They're putting
not.
them on notice as
Mike,
well, letting them know.
I'm really starting to hope you're trolling, Mike, because you know how serious climate change is. Like, you know the real reason why they're probably moving like down south and all, probably because of climate change.
Oh, that their yachts are next.
Yep.
You'll love to see it. Now, you know that the orcas are a true threat to power because American news outlets are already publishing propaganda against them.
Like, it's
For
not
example, The
propaganda.
Atlantic published a piece by
sake.
bootlicker Jacob Stern where he claims killer whales are not our friends. Stop
They
rooting
aren't.
for the orcas ramming boats. Now, just
Like, we should be protecting them because they're in danger, but at the same time, they're an apex predator who are known to go after humans, and we've seen them go after great white sharks. So
And they're powerful enough to destroy boats and make them sink.
Yeah.
Just think about that. Like, it should be obvious they're not friendly animals. They're very dangerous.
stop and think for
Even ones at SeaWorld who are trained killed people, for crying out loud.
a moment about how propagandized we are in this society,
Like,
where
it's
we're
not
being told
propagandized.
that the orcas
Right.
destroying rich people's boats is not something that we should actively root for. We should be rooting against it.
You
shouldn't.
should! Like, you
shouldn't, because they're
should!
gonna turn on
It's
fucking
dangerous!
boats.
They can kill people! Oh my god, this is just...
They'll be going after commerce and that.
Yeah, my god!
God.
No, I refuse. And
Because
the
you're
argument that he
retarded.
makes, in my opinion, is downright defamatory,
fucking God.
calling these orcas sadistic jerks who, quote, torment seal pups
I'm
as
sorry,
a
what? I missed that.
Oh my god.
refuse. And the argument that he makes, in my opinion, is downright defamatory, calling these orcas sadistic jerks who, quote, torment seal pups.
They do, Mike.
know
They
you
go
do,
after
though.
seals. They eat seals. They're called apex
Yeah.
predators. You know what that means? That means they're the ultimate predator in their biome.
As a hobby.
That's
Okay,
why
first
they
of
go
all,
after
do
us,
some
too.
orcas torment seal pups as a hobby? Sure. But maybe the seal pup deserved it. Seal pups have reportedly attacked human swimmers, so maybe those orcas were defending their human comrads. Second of all,
Mike,
if
please tell me
orcas
you're
terrorize
trolling.
seal pups so frequently,
He's gotta be
shouldn't we
trolling.
be thankful
Come on, man.
Oh my god. Yeah, seals can attack people too, I think, but still. Oh my god.
that they're now terrorizing rich people instead?
God, the
Right?
poor
I mean, aren't
human,
you happy
baby
that
seal
humpback
might have
whales
hurt
who-
his ankle?
Oftentimes defend seals and sunfish from orcas are going to now get a little bit of a break? Isn't that a good thing? Shouldn't we be happy that they've decided to direct their ire towards rich people and their yachts?
How about now?
my God.
Now, let me just say
It's
this.
more so, maybe the time they're attacking the boats is because of the loud noises that they're throwing up. Not because they're rich.
But of course, probably Michael like, aha, see? That's why rich people shouldn't have boats. Therefore, no sounds, no attack. Gotcha! Anti-capitalism.
The article is outright slander.
Just ban the use of the loud sound things in the area so they don't attract the attention of the orcas.
And I refuse to accept such broad generalizations about our cetacean comrades. But on a serious note, the question really is, like, what's going on here? Why are these orcas doing this? Are they actually terrorizing rich people? And the truth is, we really don't know for sure. Maybe the orcas read Marx. That's one theory. But marine biologists have a number of hypotheses. For example, Gizmodo continues, perhaps as marine mammal biologist Andrew Treitz hypothesized to New York Times, the uptick in orca presence is the result of locally rebounding seal and shark numbers, i.e. more orca food, or perhaps something else is going on, referring specifically to the orcas being sighted around the United States. Maybe, as my colleague Linda Kodega has speculated, the whales are orcanizing, terrible, potentially supporting Kodega's thesis. The massive pot of killer whales that were partying it up in Monterey Bay, also on Sunday, per a report from The Guardian, about 30 orcas representing 11 different family groups came together off the coast of California to splash, breach, and play. The little ones were wrestling and rolling like a bunch of puppies, Nancy Black, a marine biologist with Monterey Bay Whale Watch and the California Killer Whale Project, told The Guardian. Though the whales' motives remain murky, some researchers have theorized that the boat aggression is a learned behavior originating with a single female orca named White Gladys. Some headlines have framed the attacks as revenge attempts over a boat collision injury White Gladys may have incurred, though not all marine scientists are convinced. So basically, it's unclear why they're doing this, but I, for one, have not seen a single scientist explicitly rule out these socialist revolutionary theories, so...
Oh, Mike, just stop, please.
Take that for what it is.
Stop it.
But what is clear, however, is that human socialists have been saying we should eat the rich for years, whereas orca socialists are actually doing it. It's clear which species has actually read Lenin, and I'll leave that there.
Oh my god! I'm glad the video's over. Oh my god, I couldn't take it anymore.
It's the sound things they're sending through the ground, sending through the waters to scare them off, and climate change.
And maybe some form of just not distraction, accident or something like that. They think something is something else, like sharks do. Oh my god. Oh my god, that was so bad. I knew. Oh my god, that was a horrible video. So we gotta say about that.
It was. Oh my god, Mike, what the actual fuck, dude? Seriously, what the fuck? This is absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna say it. This is the sort of shit I'd expect from Jimmy Dore, not Mike Figueredo. Seriously. Seriously, this is the sort of shit I'd expect from Dore, not from you.
Or Harry.
Yeah. Or Jackson Dinkelberg. God.
Yep, that's what happens when you go dumb left.
What is it with him? What is it with him? Like on Force the Vote, he's just about a shitlib. And then on Rich People and Cops, he's a fucking doorknob. He's a complete doorknob. As bad, if not worse, than Dore. Like, what the fuck? Like, how does he have these two such extreme things? Like, you'd think, like, you'd have, like with Kyle. Yeah, he's got a few opinions that seem a bit doorknobby, and he's got a little bit of shitlibby things, but he's like a bit of there. How is Humanist Report? So, like one extreme or the other, he's either he's like Vosh level shitlib or fucking door level doorknob.
Because he's a dum-dum and anti-capitalist at all costs, don't you know? And anti-cop.
That would explain a lot. And as I said, it wouldn't surprise if we have another black separatist or black nationalist terror attack. I am honestly half expecting Humanist Report to do a black nationalist apologetics video.
Oh god, I just hold on. But yeah, like guys, this is not good. Like it should be just bad. this is not acceptable. Just like what happened with the Titan. That does not mean they deserve to die. And likewise, these rich people do not deserve to have their boats attacked, sunk, and then possibly almost killed by orcas. That's going to just lead to maybe them possibly going being hunted down, even if they're endangered. Like, you really are pushing that line and all that regard too. And also, stop being so bigoted towards the rich. Just like when it came to cops too, when we went after Mike for it. Yeah. Not every rich person is evil, just like not all cops are bastards. You have to go by individual case. Oh my God, so stupid.
You can understand being wary around cops, but going full ACAB like the doorknobs do is just insane.
I mean, a lot of the idiots, dumb left are anti-cop and anti-rich. Too, they want violence and all that. Not surprised. Alright, after that raging stupidity, what's next?
That would be new US-Iran nuclear agreement.
Yeah, the only reason I'm covering this because right before I went to bed last night, I got a pop-up on Microsoft Edge about this. So the only reason we're talking about it is because of this. If it weren't for that, we probably never would have talked about it. Now, of course, I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time, but I wanted to wait until we got, like, any sort of word, because remember, when Biden became president, that was one of the things he said he was going to do. He was going to get back into the Iran nuclear agreement that Trump canned a few years ago. But, of course, 2.5 years later, still hasn't happened. And basically, what it boils down to is, first, he tried to get back in the deal while also trying to make it more against Iran. Like, he actually tried to do, like, what Obama tried to do near the end of his presidency, and then Trump tried to do, like, oh, if you want to get back in the agreement, you got like restrict like your anti-missile capabilities and stuff like that, do ballistic missile bans and all that. Like, Iran's gonna be like, no, just get back in the deal how it is, and the fact that they might not demand like reparations for like all the shit that America did when they broke out. Remember, because not only did they left it, they sanctioned Iran like crazy and all that.
And they sanctioned water. They sanctioned water and pressured countries like Iraq, Armenia, Azerbaijan to dam their rivers to stop water going into Iran.
They went like crazy.
Thankfully, Iraq said we don't have the capability to do that. Plus, Armenia told them to F off, and Azerbaijan was like, because that flows the wrong way.
Yeah,
and that comes on us to our side, not Iran's.
Plus, Azerbaijan. Well, actually, no. Azerbaijan and Iran do not like each other, so that they would probably do it if it wasn't for that. But yeah, it was.
But also, like Azerbaijan's got their own things going on, so they can't really.
Yeah, bullying Armenia. Yeah. So yeah, it was just a stupid thing that Trump did, and Biden had a perfect thing he could have done. Just got back in the deal, and he would have gotten nothing but praise. But no, of course, that didn't happen. All these years later, then of course, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia would be like, "Oh, if you want to come back in, you have to remove sanctions so we can just be able to trade with Iran and all that." And it was like, no, not happen. And then Iran was being like assertive and all that, and it just never happened. Nothing ever happened, and still this day.
Also, don't forget that Iran and Saudi Arabia are now in a nuclear arms race.
Yeah, we don't need to deal with that, unfortunately. So, anyways. Yeah, this article is unfortunately really short because they decided, to read the rest of it, you gotta be subscribed to us.
Of course.
When are newspapers and stuff like that gonna learn that's not a smart thing to do? Like, you get money from ads, just make your shit free for all of us to read so we can spread out the information. So anyways, on politics, U.S., Iran close restoring an agreement to sort of replace nuclear deal. And this was done, yesterday. So here's what it is. The U.S. and Iran may be close to an agreement to replace the nuclear deal ex-President Donald Trump withdrew from the U.S. from 5 years ago, but just don't call it a deal. Of course, it's probably going to be something like, don't call it this so it doesn't make us look bad, even though it would make you look bad. You would go up in the polls buying if you did it, since it was popular when Obama did it. So what to know? The Biden administration has long promised to restore the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, known formerly as the JCPOA, which put significant restrictions on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for billions of dollars in relief from economic sanctions after Trump withdrew from the deal in 2008. And of course, giving Iran back their money that we stole from, which people conveniently don't point out and lie about, because that's the common lie that Obama gave Iran billions of dollars. No, we gave them back the money we stole from them.
Billions of their own money.
Yeah.
That we froze and threatened and have probably spent part of in trying to get Iranians killed.
So, what's the big deal? The goal of the deal was to reduce the chances of war breaking out between a nuclear-armed Iran and its regional rival Saudi Arabia, a close ally of America, Israel. However,
remember, don't forget that Israel's nuclear-armed, even if none of their nukes are deployed. I think that's what Israel's using to claim they don't have nukes. Is that the nukes they have are in storage and they're not actively deployed.
They don't confirm or deny they have them, even though it's pretty much an open secret they do.
Yeah.
However, since
Israel is nuclear armed. It's just they don't have any of them deployed. And don't forget that both Iran and Saudi Arabia are in a nuclear arms race to build up nuclear weapons and then point them at each other like Pakistan and India do.
Mm-hmm. However, since then, Saudi Arabia and Iran have restored diplomatic ties, but of course, who you could say necessarily trust that. So where's the agreement? While Biden promised to quickly rejoin the deal, it hasn't happened. In fact, the U.S. government has denied that a new deal is being negotiated with Iran. But 2 Iranian officials and 1 Israeli official told U.S. Today the U.S. and Iran are close to reaching an informal agreement aimed at improving U.S.-Iran relations and de-escalating simmering regional tensions. What would an agreement include? Our subscriber story has the details on what to know. Of course, can't even read the rest of it because you guys subscribe. So it doesn't even really sound like a deal is made. It sounds more like just improving the relationships and stuff like that. So that's kind of disappointing. Gee, maybe you shouldn't have it locked behind a paywall to read. Stupid fucks.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, Lily only added, like, right before I went to bed last night because I saw this popped up and you don't even give us really the details. So I guess, with the little bit of information we got, what do you have to say about this?
I mean, it's a start at least.
Yep, because we gotta make sure that we need to get back in this nuclear deal. It was working fine and it helped prevent possible war between Iran and America, which would be even worse than freaking Iraq.
Yeah, but don't forget that if it wasn't for the war, in Ukraine, that could very easily escalate to a third world war.
Yeah, but of course now Russia really can't do anything. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing.
But also remember that China's got ties with Iran too, and we're in the earliest things, and had that brief early stages of manufacturing consent for World War III with the whole COVID. The FBI concludes with low confidence that COVID-19 is a man-manipulated bioweapon that was accidentally released. And of course, for like a week, the words "accidentally released" were dropped from all corporate media, and it didn't do anything. And it kind of just fizzled out.
And
which was very weird.
And I just remembered too, another reason that negotiations stopped too is because Iran is giving drones and stuff to Russia to help fight in Ukraine, which is very unpoggers in Iran. If that's going to keep you from getting the deal working again, you have no one to blame but yourself. You should have not have done that.
Exactly.
That was very unpog of you. So yeah, I'm trying to look up something. I can't find anything about it, which is really annoying. But yeah, it needs to happen. It should have already happened. Be lucky that Iran's not demand like reparations for what we did. Just get back in the deal and cut sanctions and we'd be good. But no, of course, Biden being an idiot can't just do the right thing and all that. Yeah. So I tried to look up something. I found another article, but of course it's behind a paywall. But the headline says U.S. and Iran in informal talks over nuclear deal and prisoner swap. But of course, when I press on it, does the other paywall. You want to go further? It's all hidden text. You gotta pay to see it all. Assholes.
Of course.
So yeah, very annoying. But hopefully if this is true, it gets us somewhere closer to getting back in the JCPOA because that was vital and needs to be done. Alright.
Yes.
So I guess on to the next topic.
Michael Knowles continues his want for genocide.
Again, something I just saw today. We've covered Knowles so many times. It's always about trans, pretty much. These people are obsessed with. Gee, I wonder why. I'm not surprised. So, let's see, as he says, as Kyle did on, trans people don't have rights. Gee, I wonder what he's going to say this time now.
So it's a day that ends in Y, which, as you all know, that means the Daily Wire is obsessing over trans people.
When do they not?
We've all gotten kind of used to it. But they're still extremist, they're still insane, and they're still showing their whole ass to the world. So let's listen to their new diatribe against trans people.
Transgender people have the right to work. Transgender people have the right to a job. No, they don't.
I don't think anyone really has a right to a working job in America, so that's a weird thing to bring up. I mean, there are countries that do have that requirements, but I don't think America's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
The Daily Wire has
nice,
lost
though.
their normie touch a very long time ago. You know, they just look, they tried for a while to make it appealing, to be like, we just care about protecting the kids, that's what we do. And then they're seething with such anger and hatred towards trans people that in a very short time frame, it went from, we're trying to protect the kids, to even adults shouldn't be able to transition. And this is what happens. As soon as you lose your normie touch, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And now you have people saying things like this.
Transgender people have the right to work. Transgender people have the right to a job. No, they don't. And they don't because there's no such category as transgender people.
It just keeps getting worse.
There is. So
it just keeps getting worse. Look, this is an objective question.
We know that Knowles is like...
Do trans people exist?
We know that Michael Knowles really wants to say T-slurs don't have a right to exist. They just don't.
What is a trans person? Trans person is somebody who's basically born with biological sex one way, but they feel their gender is the opposite, and so they transition. Some people don't get any sort of surgery at all, but many trans people do. So the question is, does that exist? There is no debate. They're trying to make there be a debate. There's no debate. Of course they exist. They're as real as gay people are, which, by the way, they might say that doesn't exist either, right? But they're also as real as straight people are. Smaller numbers, of course, but it's real. It's not, like, why is it so hard to wrap your mind around this concept, man? It's
because
really
he's
not
a
that
bigot.
difficult.
That's
Some people are born one way, but they
don't
feel
like
like the
trans
opposite.
people, and they just
living
want to
in
die,
alignment
so they don't
with
care.
how they feel makes them a lot happier. Makes them feel a hell of a lot better.
They're Karens, as we call
like
them.
Gender dysphoria is a real thing. It exists.
Because there's no such category as transgender people. There are just people. There are
well,
people,
yeah, they are people, but they're
people
trans, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Are defined in a certain way, and people are defined by things outside of their own self-perception and their own disordered desires.
Disordered desire. Okay. Yes, people are people. But we also have just objective descriptors. Like, you know, somebody could be trans, somebody could be gay, somebody could be straight and cis. Like, I don't even know what he's getting. I don't even know what he's trying to get at here.
Let's just
I don't
call him
even
a Karen
know.
and
It's
be
just
on the way.
Genocide.
It's a day
Genocide.
So
That's what he's getting at. He wants to genocide the T-slurs, as he would say.
Outside of their own self-perception and their own disordered desires. There is no such thing as a transgender person. There are just people, and some people are confused, and some people have fallen into fantasies, and some people are pursuing disordered sexual desires and fetishes.
What does a trans person have to do with disordered sexual desires? Whether or not somebody is trans has no, bearing on what they're into sexually. It's a separate thing. Like, of course, there are people who have some very questionable sexual desires, but that's also across the board, by the way. It's not like only trans people have weird sexual desires. Plenty of people have weird sexual desires.
And some people are pursuing disordered sexual desires and fetishes, but that doesn't change who and what they really are. And so a man does not have any right to dress up in public life as a woman.
Of course they do. They absolutely do.
Yep.
Outside of work and safety requirements, you can dress however you want.
There's no law, there's no rule or regulation that says you have to dress in the way that coincides with your biological sex at birth. That doesn't exist. You literally have the right to do what he's saying you don't have the right to do. I know in his ideal world, they would have an authoritarian mandate that you must dress like a man if you were born biologically a man. And you must live in a Leave It to Beaver-like situation. You're gonna one man, one woman, married, 2 kids, white picket fence.
Oh, and there's something else I want to say as well for Michael Knowles. Okay, groomer.
True.
I'll tell you to dress.
Especially to Walsh, remember?
Who gives a shit, man? I can't thinking about shit like this. I cannot imagine it. We have people who don't have health care. We have people who are dying in wars.
But those are good.
We
Don't
have
you know,
hundreds
Kyle?
of thousands of homeless people. We have tens of thousands of homeless U.S. veterans. This is the shit he cares about, man.
To dress up in public life as a woman. And a man does not have a right to dress up like a woman to go do whatever job he wants. The Supreme Court...
Well, outside of work requirements, yeah, you can dress however you want.
Unfortunately, has ruled that a man does have that right.
You don't have that right. So, I mean, you do have it, but I'm going to say you don't have it.
And you saw this specifically in the Harris Funeral Homes case just
Okay,
a few years ago.
okay,
I love how he's like
Karen.
up on all the case law around gay issues and trans issues. Like, he knows the names of the cases. This is what he spends all night reading and jacking off to. I mean, just reading.
And you've seen this in the Boston decision, which says that civil rights protections on the basis of sex are actually, when you really think about it, civil rights protections on the basis of gender identity. And this is an absurd Supreme Court ruling, and it should certainly be overturned, as many Supreme Court rulings have been overturned in American history.
Effectively, what he's saying there is anti-discrimination protection should not extend to trans people. That's the argument he's making.
Which it should.
So he's arguing for legal discrimination against trans people. That's the point he's making.
You don't have the right to do it. And transgenderism is such a hot issue that sometimes it's difficult.
It is hot, isn't it? It is hot, Michael. I know you think it is, fella. I know. I know.
Liberals to see past it because they just are so invested in transcending the boundaries of reality.
Yeah,
That
the
is some
liberals.
severe
They're
projection.
really obsessed with this issue, man. I would love it. Compare any. I'm probably a left outlet that talks about these things more than any other left outlet at this point. Strictly because I'm playing defense against these psychopaths, right?
It's funny, Kyle, because you're always accused of never talking about LGBT issues. That was like what Big Chris and I remember a few years ago. Do you remember that? When he always did, as I kept having to defend him from
Yes,
idiots.
I remember that. Yeah.
But compare how much I've talked about it to how often they talk about it. They blow me out of the water. I mean, it is not even
They
close
talk
against
about.
David
I mean, Michael Knowles talks about it in like every other video, literally.
Because he's obsessed with it. Gee, I wonder
Yeah.
why.
By the way, apropos of nothing, here's Michael Knowles back when he was trying to be an actor, and he failed. And he wanted to give you a little show here.
Okay, new scene. Haley and Jamie getting out on the mattresses. Their brother and sister.
That was really awkward.
All right, dude. All right, look, it's hard to not conclude that he's still an actor, right? He's playing the role. It's hard to not conclude that. It really is. Because, I don't know, you can't be this obsessed with this. Matt Walsh, too, like, how the hell are you this obsessed with this? And by the way, it has gotten beyond deranged. This is actually rather tame compared to other things I've seen within the past week. Like, this is just, I don't think you have...
That's because Knowles is a
I don't
cuck
think you have a
compared
right
to
to a
Walsh.
job, right? I want to get rid of the anti-discrimination protection.
But he's also
Matt Walsh was on
kind of,
Twitter
you
the other
know,
day.
been actually kind of evil.
Basically saying trans stuff comes originally from the Nazis.
What the fuck?
LGBT are Nazis now.
There's literally a record of trans
Well,
people
that's
going
why
back
they're going for
4,000.
genocide. They're going for the genocidal rhetoric.
Oh, yes,
That's why
I
they
remember
do that with the Nazi terrorist state of the Ukraine, because it's the same thing there.
Oh, good. I remember Brian Fisher saying that too. That Nazis were gay. Remember those arguments from a
Yes,
decade
I
ago?
remember that. Oh, jeez. Brian Fisher was one of the most in the closet people. No, he was the most in the closet person at the time.
I have not heard that name in so long. I'm gonna look him up on
It was in
Wikipedia.
500 years. So they've existed in countless societies. So maybe they've just always sort of been around, like gay people have as well. Just back in the day, it was more in the closet, it was more repressed. Anyway, I don't think I need to say any more. This stuff is beyond deranged. I can't imagine somebody who sits there and, like, soaks this stuff up on a daily basis. Like, why? What's the point? This is your obsession? Like, let me figure out how to make life more difficult for trans people? I know you think it either doesn't exist or it does exist and it's degeneracy and it's wrong because it's outside of the normal order of things or whatever. But to what ends? To what ends? You're never going to abolish it. You're never going to get rid of it. So you just want to make their life as difficult as possible? Why? Why? Just
Those
for
are
pure
Karens.
hatred? Or to trigger the libs or whatever? Like, what's the point,
They're
man?
busybodies.
What's the point? You can't base a politics off of, here are the things I don't like. You got to base politics on, what am I in favor of? What is a good,
favor
net
of killing
good for
France.
society?
That's what
Unless,
we
of course,
want.
you know, you're one of those people who doesn't want any good for society. But that's nihilistic, and if that's, you know, your perspective, just don't even get involved in politics. Go pick up fucking Parcheesi or volleyball or whatever, some other
grass.
shit that doesn't ruin people's lives with your engagement in it.
Hey, y'all,
Enjoy
do
a
me
man's
favor
touch.
and like and
Since
subscribe.
deep
It
down,
helps
we
out
know that's
big
the
time.
real reason you're crying about it.
Yep.
So we gotta say about Knowles being a
So I
cuck
just
as
found
always.
out that Ryan Fisher had his show cancelled in 2021 following the 4th of July weekend.
I was just reading that
There's
up
no
too.
explanation for why.
Yep.
Why do I get the feeling he might have been secretly outed?
Well, we've been saying it for a long time, but of course,
Yep.
still nothing on.
Remember the because I love black males.
Yep.
I love black males cocks.
Yep.
Well, that one was awesome by Kyle. Just exactly knew what it was going to say.
Yep. So now, what do you guys say about Knowles being a cuck?
No surprise.
And a
It's
Karen.
Knowles.
Yep.
And a groomer.
Go touch
Now,
grass, Knowles. Go touch
Yep.
some grass. All right. So now, on to the next subject.
RFK Jr. is a joke and a quack.
Oh my gosh. So of course, as we all know, there's a upcoming soon is the primaries for the America's president. Now, of course, we've talked about on the show before Biden's run, and Marianne Williamson is running against him, and she is the base progressive challenger against him. Well, he also has another challenger against him, and that is RFK Jr. Now, don't get it twisted, though, people. He is not a progressive. Oh, no. Not only is he not a progressive, if anything, he's to the right of Biden. Biden's a progressive in comparison to this nut job. And the fact that he is polling way better than Williamson is pretty pathetic. How is this guy even getting any sort of polling? He sucks. He has no appeal whatsoever. And he is an idiot. And
You know exactly why. It's name recognition.
It's been like 60 years. How are people still obsessed over that Kennedy name, for crying out loud? I will never get it. But yeah, this guy is delusional. So, of course, the main thing he's well known for, guys, he is a hardcore anti-vaxxer. And it's not even just like COVID stuff recently. He believes the bullshit that vaccines cause autism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All the stuff that's scientifically proven false, he still denies it.
You need to fuck off and die.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And you know what, too, since we brought up right now, we should maybe talk about COVID really quickly. Since, of course, if you know, recently, last month, they officially, I guess it was WHO, officially declassified COVID as a major, like, health concern. Now, it's still a pandemic for all of you who don't know. It's still a pandemic, and it's still out there, and you should get vaccinated if you haven't done so or such to make sure you're safe. But now, of course...
I should also mention that I got infected again fairly recently.
But of course...
So I got, and I actually had to take antibiotics because I got a secondary lung infection from it.
But of course, since you're vaccinated, you handle a lot better than most people who aren't.
Yep.
That's right. Always get vaccinated so you make yourself safe. But of course, after like the Russia-Ukraine war, I have really never heard anything about like COVID since pretty much. So it's been well over a year, and I just read up on Wikipedia because I was really curious looking into like how the world's treated right now. And Wikipedia said by like June of this year, the world's pretty much back to how it was pre-pandemic. Like, no one takes it seriously anymore and stuff like that. Like, no one's talking about lockdowns or mask mandates.
Nobody's even taking well, okay, no, they started again, but for a long time people were not even taking the most basic precautions.
Yeah, they're not either at all probably right now too. But like, no one's taking it seriously. I mean, COVID as a big threat anymore. Yet this person, this fucking nut job, is still obsessed like the vax mandates, the mask mandates, and all that. They're not doing it. They weren't really doing most of those stuff that they were saying either. But they're definitely not doing it now. So why are you fucking obsessing over it? It's over.
Because it's part of his globalist with a triple parenthesis around it conspiracies.
So yeah, this guy is a hardcore anti-vaxxer, as I'm trying to find him. Oh yeah, as I found too, he's against America helping out Ukraine, the Russo-Ukraine war. So that's another
of course,
negative.
He's pro-genocide.
And of course, Wikipedia, stop being a cunt. He is a hardcore conspiracy theorist and all that. And I'm still trying to find his thing about vaccines because, oh boy, it is pretty bad. And still trying to read this because there was a whole bunch of... Oh, if I remember correctly too, he's pro-Israel side on them genociding the Palestinians. So of course, no surprise, piece of shit. He's against nuclear energy. Here, oh no, this is where's the vaccine one again? So much bad stuff about him, as we can see. Like, if you're gonna run as a Republican. You'd fit right better in them, for crying out loud, instead of in the Democratic Party. Ugh, where is that? So much stuff! I still haven't gotten to this vaccine stuff yet. Anti-vaccine, here we go. Kennedy is a key player in the anti-vaccine movement, spread misinformation and propaganda. Vaccines cause autism, as I just mentioned before.
Yep.
Oh, and cancer. Vaccines cause cancers. That's a classic one. Oh, Wi-Fi now too. Wi-Fi now causes cancer.
Yes. That one is destructive, because that's actually now as people are destroying the holes now and taking up people's internet.
So yeah, really dumb, as you could see. This guy is delusional. And of course, he recently got into a spat with some doctor that used to be on Joe Rogan's podcast about
I remember that.
Joe Rogan be like, I'll give you $100,000 for charity of a choice if you debate this retard and stuff like that. Like, and of course he doesn't do it. And there's been so many arguments of should he or should he not. I'm not going to get into that, but
no,
this guy is just a quack. This guy is delusional. Yet he's doing way better than Marianne Williamson, which is bad enough. He actually has well over 10% of Poland in the Democratic primary. I really cannot see how it's just the name that people would support this guy. He is nuts. Like, what is so appealing about him? And I like when I'm trying to type in primary, phone be like, you're going to put in pri. How about that, asshole? Oh my god. So yeah, it's just, right now for Democratic primary, it's Biden, Williamson, and RFK Jr. Like, oh my gosh, this... like, what do you gotta say about this? I'm like just flabbergasted how this guy is even running the Democratic primary and has any sort of traction whatsoever.
Yeah.
What do you gotta say about it?
Again, it's name recognition. That's the only reason that he's got traction.
And of course, I'm looking at 538, the recent polls. They have like a whole bunch of people on here. This poll has Williamson at 1%, which I've seen polls that usually are way better than that. But Kennedy's 5% and stuff like that. I've seen way higher than that. All the polls here we go. Here's one which just the free. So right now, according to this poll from 538, Democratic primary voters, 64% would vote for Biden, 17% for Kennedy. Dude, how is he getting 20%? And 10% for Williamson.
Oh, wow. I'm amazed I'm just kind of surprised she's at 10%.
Yeah, I've seen a lot lower than that, but I've seen even Kennedy higher than that. I've seen one poll, I think it was like almost over 20%. And Biden's polling is not really that good either, from what I've seen. Which, hey, good. Hopefully it'll be less likely he'll win. But of course, I mean, between these two, I kind of would hope Biden wins because this guy is absolutely insane compared to Biden. Biden is a progressive compared to this nut job. Anti-vaccine, anti-support in Ukraine, anti-Palestine, and oh my god, this guy is fucking nuts.
He's pro-genocide in multiple regards.
Yeah.
Pro-genociding the Palestinians, pro-genociding the Ukrainians.
So yeah, guys, please don't like this guy. He is a jackass. He should be kicked out of the Democratic Party, if anything, because he is so stupid and a piece of shit. Please get out of the Democratic primary. Run the Republican Party. That would make sense for you, actually. Maybe you could be the reasonable option against Trump, even though you're insane. Oh my God, fucking stupid. So please, people, don't support this dipshit. All right. So I think we've talked enough about this jackass. Now what's next?
Kirsten Sinema wants to deregulate airline training because she's a Republican and evil.
And guys, remember we were talking about the Titan disaster earlier on why you need strong regulations to prevent stuff like this? Well, Kirsten Sinema is showing why you need to have regulations because... Oh, and also corruption too. Because now she wants to deregulate training requirements for pilots for airliners because she was bought off by the airline industry and they wanted to cut down on training because that cost them too much money, as you know. Oh my gosh. Like I said, you cannot trust corporations to do the right thing. You have to force them. So yeah, let's see this stupid BS.
As far as Democrats go, Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are the worst of the worst. They are as conservative as a Democrat gets, but more importantly, as corrupt as a Democrat gets. And for all my issues with Joe Biden, for example, he's significantly to the left of somebody like Kirsten Sinema and somebody like Joe Manchin. He has been way more progressive than a President Manchin or President Sinema would be. And the more you learn about Sinema and the more you learn about Manchin, the more you wince and the grosser they become. Because effectively, they are the biggest corporate whores in the party. So I tell you that to show you this. Kirsten Sinema moves to slash pilot training after taking airline cash. The airline-backed amendments to radically alter pilot training requirements is opposed by pilot and flight attendant unions. Of all the things in the world to prioritize, you're screaming for less training for pilots?
Yeah, guys, because we know they're too regulated. We can't. They require too many hours to fly and all that. Surely we could cut down on to save that one extra penny.
Apparently everything takes too many hours. But I've seen with the cop, they need way more hours. I mean, okay. To give you an idea, 13 deaths in the last year of minorities at traffic stops in France has caused full-blown riots.
Yep.
We have every time there's a death in custody in Australia, we have thousands of protesters every time. In America, black people are massacred, and we don't hear nothing.
Yep, that's American culture. We don't do that shit over here. We think most people here think people in France are insane and violent before it.
Where do you even begin? So here's what they say in The Intercept. In a blistering attack on her Senate colleague last week, Senator Tammy Duckworth warned independent Arizona Senator Kirsten Sinema, that's right, she became an independent after being the world's worst Democrat, that a proposal to reduce the number of required in-flight training hours for pilots would result in, quote, blood on your hands. I'm going to show you that video shortly. The attack from Duckworth was prompted by an amendment supported by Sinema and Senator John Thune, a Republican from South Dakota, that would allow pilots to meet training requirements by substituting hours spent in a flight simulator for actual flight time.
Yeah, because flight simulators are necessarily the most accurate and reliable ways to see how flying a plane is. Why do I get the feeling that it's probably going to be like flying in a Microsoft simulator instead of like a real simulator? Like, this is stupid. Yeah.
Or
hey, you know what? I played Microsoft Flight Simulator before. Oh, I'm a good pilot now because I played and landed a plane. Oh, I should be a pilot now, don't you know?
For Duckworth, who lost both of her legs to a rocket attack on the Black Hawk helicopter she was piloting.
Or Flight Simulator X.
During the Iraq War.
Oh, I remember Aaron playing one of those.
Actually, Flight Simulator X might be more realistic.
I remember Aaron playing that like a year or so ago, and man, it was so funny watching struggle land a plane.
The issue was personal.
This is probably. I think this is the one. I think this is the one. I'll just do. Have I got mine muted? Good. I want to just check something quickly here. I have to add. There's a particular video It's one of these two. I think it's this one. Once the ads finish, then we can actually find out. Unless you find out, because I think it looks like.
And as you looked it up, I'm looking up how to become a airline or commercial pilot from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And it says here, airline pilots typically need a bachelor's degree and experience as a commercial or military pilot. Commercial pilots typically need flight training. Both must meet FAA requirements. I was hoping it would say, like, how many hours you need. That's what I'm trying to look up, like, very curious. And all that.
I'm going to try and find this because it's several years ago now, but I was dying laughing on this one.
Time to put corporate profits ahead of the lives of our constituents who may want to board a commercial flight in the future.
Yes, found it.
What?
Ridiculous behavior in Flight Simulator X.
A vote to reduce a 1,500-hour rule for pilot training will mean blood on your hands, and when an inevitable accident occurs as a result of an inadequately
everything
trained
you've got
flight
done.
crew, the 11th hour.
So according to this, what Duckworth says, pilots require 15 hours of training.
Amendment in the Senate Committee on
That's quite a
Commerce.
lot of time. How much? Maybe you should see how much that is in days. 15 hours.
That's 2/3 of a day. That's about 60% of a day.
A day has like 24 hours, though.
Yes.
So it's got to be like a couple weeks worth of train, probably.
Wait, 15 or... Wait, how many hours?
1,500 hours.
Oh, 1,500.
Yeah.
No. 1,500. That's 2 months.
Yeah, that's how much currently required for pilot training to become pilots, at least.
Yep.
Which, hey, that sounds like a lot, but hey, these planes are very difficult to handle, even with autopilots. If all the experts in the industry think you need 15 hours to learn to fly, then keep it there.
Science and Transportation comes as the September 30th deadline to reauthorize the Federal Aviation Act looms. Cinema's campaign received an influx of cash over the last year from the airline industry.
Corruption
The
at its
donations would be
finest.
crucial to the senator
Yep.
as she strikes out as a newly christened independent during a challenging re-election bid. Without her Democratic Party affiliation, Sinema heads into the 2024 race without the political or financial backing of her former...
I guess she's probably lying like Pelosi. I could have swore we covered that she was going to retire. Don't you remember that?
What?
I thought Sinema was going to retire. Not run again as an independent. Do you remember that? I could have swore we covered...
Yeah, I kind of remember that. Honestly, again, when I said, and she defected from the Democrats, I legitimately was like, wait, independent? I thought she was going to join the Republicans.
I guess she's trying to fuck over the Democrats, since I'm sure a lot of Democratic voters are going to probably vote for her and fuck over the actual Democratic nominee as like her on the way out.
Yep.
Party.
But she's an
Cinema's
asshole.
amendment is
Well,
being
actually,
opposed by
apparently,
Senate
she's really bad with people anyway, so...
Yep. But all it needs is just that little bit of taking away votes.
flight attendant unions, quote, any change to the rule must have sign-off from pilots or we don't trust it. Sarah Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants CWA, representing 50,000 flight attendants, told The Intercept, quote, it's that simple. According to campaign finance data compiled by Open Secrets, Sinema raised over $150,000 from the airline industry over the past 2 election cycles, with the majority of that money received over the last 2 years. Sinema's donors include the largest air carrier trade group, Airlines for America, in addition to regional carriers like Alaska Airlines. Sinema's office did not respond to The Intercept's request for comment. This reminds me of during the Build Back Better negotiation, Kirsten Sinema took $1 million from Big Pharma, and then turned around and said, you know what, I don't want to lower prescription drug prices. I don't want to lower prescription drug prices. I don't want to negotiate for lower drug prices. What do you want me to tell you? Even Joe Manchin was like, hey, I wanted to go further on lowering drug prices, but there was one person who was a holdout, and we couldn't do it. He was talking about Sinema. So what do we end up getting? We ended up getting lower prices for like 5 or 10 drugs over, however many years, and it's only for seniors. You have Kirsten Sinema to thank for that. So basically, like, brazen bribery and corruption from the industry. Well, now it's crossed over into pilot training. I can't imagine if you were going to do anything vis-a-vis pilots and you're in Congress and you're in the Senate, I would say fight to raise their pay. Don't fight
and
to
possibly even make it even put in more regulations to make sure they're trained better.
And make them weaker.
Yeah.
So anyway, here is Tammy Duckworth going after Kirsten Sinema. Check it out.
And there has not been a single aviation fatality due to pilot error since the 1,500-hour rule was put into effect. Now is not the time.
I don't know about that, Tammy. I've seen a lot of airline crash because of pilot error, so I don't know if it would be a smart idea to necessarily say that, but doesn't change the fact that it's still needed if the industry says so.
Put corporate profits ahead of the lives of our constituents who may want to board a commercial flight in the future. A vote to reduce a 1,500-hour rule for pilot training will mean blood on your hands when an inevitable accident occurs as a result of an inadequately trained flight crew. I urge my colleagues to uphold the 1,500-hour rule.
I find it hilarious that this is happening too, like, the same week that the Titan disaster happened.
I just mentioned that.
Like, the whole takeaway from the Titanic submersible, the Titan, from the Ocean Gate Company, the whole takeaway from that is, hey man, regulations are really, really important, especially
regulations
safety
are always
regulations.
important, people.
Yes,
Remember the Turkey earthquake, where apparently there's a lot of bribery going on behind the scenes, and
Another, and that's since Kyle mentioned earthquakes, we mentioned too. Here's another way regulations are good. Building codes in Japan. Remember when they had the 2011? You remember how bad the earthquake was in 2011? But remember, it wasn't the earthquake that killed like 20,000 people. It was the majority of it was the tsunami. That was that was one of the strongest earthquakes.
And remember that Japan's got all that irradiated water that they're trying to treat before they release. And they've said that it could take up to a century to get rid of it all.
But it was the earthquake at Japan. It was one of the strongest earthquakes in history. It's up there as one of the strongest. It was over 9 on the Richter scale. Yet most of their buildings held up fine and stuff. Any destruction was the tsunami. Now remember when the earthquake happened in Turkey and Syria a few months ago? That was only a 7 on the Richter scale. But I think last I saw it was like. It was like, I think like up to almost 50,000 people died.
Yep.
It was less strong.
The last number I saw was 54,000.
Yeah, think about that, guys. A weaker earthquake, but like up to maybe 2 to 3 times the people died. Why? Because Turkey's building codes are not as strict as it is to Japan when it comes to prevent damage from earthquakes. Since Japan gets earthquakes literally every day, as I've seen, since they're in the Pacific Ring of Fire, they have to regulate themselves to sustain earthquakes. And I guess Turkey is not. And since they're not as developed as Japan, they've bore the consequences. Just like Haiti, remember, when they had their earthquake in 2010. I think it was about... I think Turkey... Haiti's earthquake was about the same strength as the one in Turkey. They had, I think over 200,000 people died. Because Haiti was such a shithole, they had no building codes pretty much whatsoever. Regulations is needed. It's not debatable. They are needed, and that is final.
And the government was getting paid off by builders.
Oh, by the way, I can't hear Carl at all.
They cut a lot of corners, skirted a lot of regulations, and then when the earthquake hit,
there we go, we're back.
These buildings were collapsing that shouldn't have collapsed.
Just you need regulations to make buildings safe from earthquakes, to prevent submersibles from imploding and going down to the Titanic, and to make sure pilots are well trained.
Turns out safety regulations are important.
That should be the lesson from the Titan disaster. Regulations are always important, and all the people that oppose regulations should be mocked forever.
I feel horrible for that 19-year-old kid who died getting crushed to death in a submersible implosion because the thing was only approved to go down 1,000 meters, and they were down 4,000 meters. I feel terrible for that kid. So, regulations are super important. And simply to get a payday, she wants to weaken them. She wants to weaken them. And they go on to say here, there's more perfect union. They talk about how, you guys remember this? The airlines got bailed out at the beginning of COVID. And then they agreed, hey, we'll take the bailout money, but as a part of that was you can't fire pilots and other staff. So what do? They found a loophole, and they basically they paid people off to resign. So it was like they just skirted one of the only conditions that was given to them if they were going to get a bailout. And of course, what happened? They as happened with all these corporations getting these bailouts, corporate profits went to a record high at a time when the economy was struggling, and it wasn't trickling down to the workers, and everybody was worse off for it. And we saw this with inflation, too. It really is greedflation, where corporations were just raising prices because they could get away with it, because there was this hysteria around inflation at the time. And so, in other words, it wasn't the big government spending. It had a lot to do with corporate greed, corporate profits. And here we are. Mm-hmm. Here we are. So the airlines already got away with murder when it came to getting paid off, using a disaster to get paid off. And then, by the way, never brought the service back to the level it was supposed to be at, even post-pandemic. You got all these cancellations, all these issues. And they're just trying to... apparently their way to try to fix this is, let's just skimp on the training for the pilots so that we can get more pilots out there. No. How about you bring back some of the pilots who you basically made retire early? How about that? How about you find a way to do the right thing without getting around safety regulations, which are there for a reason? How about that? But they're not going to do that. And Kirsten Sinema was there to help them every single step of the way. I used to have a teacher in, I forget what grade it was. I think it was like 5th grade or 4th grade or something. And she used to say, in our class, a C is failing. And, you know, I thought that was interesting, right? Because usually it's an F that fails, D is barely passing, etc. You guys know the gist of it. And her argument was, would you want to get on a plane with a pilot who got a C? And it's like, no, I really wouldn't. I'd like an A-plus pilot, please, without a doubt. Yeah.
And that requires strict training.
That makes sense, right? And the whole point of this training is to make it so we have A-plus pilots. I don't want the C pilot. I don't want that.
You can't trust autopilot all the time, people.
Why? Because she wants to get paid. Hey, y'all, do me a...
Yep, not surprised. So what do you guys say about Karen Sinema trying to make airplanes less safe?
No surprise. She's evil, so it doesn't matter. She doesn't matter. She loves people dying. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, one other thing. Guess who? So, Emma Vigilant recently debated with Tim Pool. Yeah, guess who his co-host was at the time, because I wondered what had happened to this guy. He kind of just fell off the map.
What about him?
Actual Justice Warrior.
Yeah, I saw that. Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah. Like, that was a surprise. And then I'm like, wait. And during the bits I've heard, I'm like, wait. And then not only that, I got even more thing, but I'm like, wait, I remember you being an absolute brain-dead idiot. What are you doing being more reasonable than Tim Pool? That I remembered, oh, wait, Tim Pool's IQ is negative. So room temperature IQ would be genius compared to him.
Gotta make sure that beanie's there to keep the hole from his head showing up. Alright, so anything left to say about Karen Sinema before we wrap it up?
Not really.
Other than, fuck you and hope it fails, because airline industries, just like as we saw with the Titan disaster, strong regulations are required, people. Always remember that. Government regulation, always based. Alright, so that is all the topics. So see you guys next time for episode 80.